We'll call the meeting to order. Nope. Hello. We'll call the meeting to order. Let the record show all board members are present. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the first thing on our agenda, the only thing on our agenda, conduct training to comply with the West Virginia House Bill 2499. And Mr. Snuffer.
Okay, first thing is, if we could have your cooperation today, this training, I know you do it with students, but we do it with adults too. Let's take your cell phones and make sure you at least mute those so we don't have ringing or something like that during the training session. I want to welcome all of you this morning. It's very rarely we get all the staff together. I think we're still probably missing some, but we do have a lot of you here, and we appreciate you. You know, Raleigh County says making a difference one student at a time, and you're the individuals who make that difference. And we truly appreciate you, everything you do, your time, your contribution, the energy you put into our students. And so I just want to note from the school board that we really do, it doesn't go unnoticed. It's tough times in education, and you guys are on the front line, and we appreciate that. Today's training is all about House Bill 2499, which was dictated by the legislature. It wasn't something we came up with, so it's kind of, it is what it is. We'll go through it. Some of them will probably say, well, I'm not a special ed teacher, or I'm not involved in special ed. You know, I teach calculus or something, whatever it may be. I don't have special ed in my class, but you probably have someone with an IEP. So, and one of the stats we looked at the other day, which is kind of shocking, maybe shocking to you, it was shocking to me, that the prediction is because of the Hope Scholarship, the number of homeschools and other entities that are coming about that are challenging public education, that a lot of counties could see over 50% of their students be special ed in the next 5 to 6 years. That's a lot. That's a lot. Because special ed kids aren't going to those other programs. They're staying with us. So that puts more challenge on us, more pressure for us to perform. And you're the people who do that, and we appreciate it. So as we go through this training today, there's a lot of things in it. It'll be reruns for you, stuff you've had before. You probably already know. But the legislature mandated this training be done orally, in person, to the staff. It had to be done by the principals and the board. So we get started here. The first slide. Got an agenda? Get it changed here. There we go. Per House Bill 2499, guidelines, all information included in this training will be read aloud to ensure that all pertinent points are communicated in full compliance with the mandate. That's why we're here, okay? It would have been nice to send it out to you or send you a video, but it had to be done in person. There's 4 different sections we'll be covering today. The first one will be West Virginia Code 18A.3.13, training course IDEA, federal regulations, and policy 2419. Well, then we'll cover West Virginia Code 1820-1C, integrated classrooms serving students with special needs. West Virginia Code 18.20-12, special education student instructor ratios and waivers. And the last one, number 4, is policy 2419, excerpts, highlights of policy 2419 in relation to House Bill 2499. Okay, here's the first part. It's code 18-3.13, training course, federal regulations, and policy 2419. I know this is kind of dry, guys, but this is the way it's got to be. So please bear with us. Each principal and county board members shall inform teachers in person of their rights, included but not limited to documentation process within a 45-day grading period for teachers, the rights of teachers when it comes to informing parents of local advocates who can come to their IEP meetings, protection methods in place for teachers who advocate for students' placement. All teacher protections and rights set forth under 18-20.1 8-1C, IEP meetings format. In every IEP meeting, a representative of the school shall explain to the guardian verbally. That's always been there, I think, but maybe we haven't been doing that, I understood. So that will be a big thing now, that you must read it to them. Even if they don't want it read, we're going to read it to them verbally. The process for identifying a student, parent due process rights, teacher protections, procedural rights, local advocate centers, information, and points of contact. Okay, what this will happen is the principals will be carrying on now. They'll go through each one of these sections and go over their information with you, and then we'll come back and I'll wrap it up, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Snuffer. Good morning to you all. My name is Ryan Stafford. I'm the principal at Woodrow Wilson High School, and it's good to be with you all. As we move through this, the way in which we will try to capture the essence of what the legislature intends us to cover, it will sound like, you know, we're reading to you a lot, but it's important that we capture the essence that they intended for us to capture, okay? So much of the elaboration will be done back at your home school with your principal as you all have questions. This is just a kind of a 1,000-foot view of what we're covering today. Okay, so if I could have the next slide here. West Virginia Code 18-20-1C. The general education classroom teacher is entitled to the following when a student with exceptional needs is placed into an integrated classroom and the student's IEP requires curriculum modifications. So again, what we do with special ed students every day, including the delivery of instruction or services and accommodations to be provided by the regular classroom teacher. Looking at this slide here, continuing on with Code 18-20-1C. Number one, training provided pursuant to the rules developed by the State Board of Education if requested by the regular classroom teacher. So again, not to put anybody on an island, okay? I know sometimes there's a lot that you do daily, okay? And your principals appreciate that. Outlined in this policy is the necessary training that should accompany that. So in red print here, what we thought was vital for you guys to take from this slide, when possible, training shall be provided before placement, but no later than 10 days. Unavoidable delays, and this is very important, unavoidable delays in training may not result in the exclusion of a student with special needs from any class setting. Okay, of course, we handle student needs first. Failure to make time, I know Mr. Price, it kind of stuck with me. Mr. Price, our former superintendent, always said, we don't have time not to take the time for these things that matter and these things that are important. Of course, student needs come first, okay? So failure to meet that should never result in a student not being in the correct setting, in their least restrictive environment. Our next page here, the slide on the board, again, teachers are entitled to a copy of the IEP, okay? And also worth noting that receiving and referring teachers shall participate in the development of that student's IEP. I know we see that more probably on the primary level, certainly on the primary level when most of our students with special needs are being identified, okay? On the high school level, we deal much less so with the identification and more with just adjusting to the evolving needs of that student, okay? But understand you're entitled to a copy of that IEP. And also, this is worth noting, very important, any teacher or IEP member disagreeing with the team's recommendation shall file a written explanation outlining the disagreement or recommendation. If you've been in an IEP meeting before where the team did not agree on everything, and we're all professionals, we all have a different professional opinion, or maybe like a manifestation meeting where people disagree, just remember that we always note that in writing, so there's a record of the disagreement. Next slide, please. Participation by referring teachers in all eligibility committee, and participation by referring and receiving teachers. And again, the referring happens much more on a primary level than it probably does a secondary level. But again, even on the secondary level, there's not a magic wand. Students' needs evolve, and it's important that when we address those evolving needs, that both the referring and receiving teachers have a hand in the IEP process. Next. Opportunity. Okay, classroom teachers are entitled to the opportunity to reconvene the committee responsible for the IEP of the student with the special needs as they're assigned to a classroom teacher. So in red print here, you see after 45 days. Okay, so we have a student with an individualized education plan, and we're making sure that the IEP team decision, we're doing our best to collect data those first 45 days. Okay, that 45 days is important. And what's also important, we don't make decisions for children based on our feelings, right? So we make decisions based on data. So collecting the appropriate data, that takes time. You want a legitimate sample size. That's where the 45 days comes into play. Moving on through that paragraph there, the meeting, back one for me if you don't mind, thank you. The meeting shall include all persons involved in that student's IEP and should be held within 21 days of the time that the request is made. So you have 45 days, you're collecting your data, you've got your sample size there, and then once that 45 days has passed, if we don't think that elements of that IEP are in the best interest of that student or providing that student with their least restrictive environment, which is always the goal, then we go back to the drawing board, and we have to have that meeting upon request within 21 days of that. Next slide, please. I would like to think that this goes without saying, but again, to capture the legislature's intentions here, a teacher may not be penalized in any way for advocating for his or her student, and the teacher may work with the family or guardian of the student to recommend local advocates, share documentation and information, inform the guardians of his or her due process rights, and may call an IEP meeting to review the information gathered from documentation to best address the student needs. Again, if we're in this business for the right reasons, our desires evolve as that student's needs evolve, okay? So again, I would hope that it would go without saying, but please know that advocates for children is the type of people that your principals wish to be around, okay? So that absolutely will not result in any sort of penalty. With this next slide here, and I believe my last slide, please keep in mind that the general education classroom teacher is entitled to assistance from persons trained or certified to address a student's exceptional needs whenever assistance is part of the student's IEP as necessary to promote accomplishment of the program's goals and objectives, provided that aides in the area of special education cannot be reassigned to more than one school without the employee's consent. Okay, so this is in reference to our wonderful aides that help us on the daily and that are trained to do so. And I guess I will pass the mic to Miss Mallory Green from Independence High School.
I'm Mallory Green, the principal at Independence High School. I'm just going to continue reading a PowerPoint to you. Other than teachers already required to participate in the development of a student's IEP and sign it as provided previously in this section, all other teachers whose class or program a student with exceptional needs is enrolled shall participate in the meeting to develop the student's IEP or read and sign a copy of the IEP, acknowledging that he or she has read and understands it. Make appropriate accommodations and modifications for the student, if needed and identified, to help the student succeed in the class or program, and document, at minimum, the provision of these accommodations and modifications. The general education teacher shall not be responsible for daily accommodation logs. The general education teacher shall only be responsible for acknowledging at the end of each grading period that each accommodation as required by the IEP has been met. All accommodations of the student shall be discussed before placement, and it is the responsibility of the special education instructor to monitor progress. Parents and guardians may request daily accommodation logs. Data to support the decision to place a student into an integrated classroom shall be included in the IEP. Nothing in this section may be construed as interfering with or limiting access to the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and the regulatory due process and complaint procedures available to students, families, and personnel. This requirement includes, but is not limited to, music education, art, driver education, health, foreign language, and other instruction offered. We good? If the teacher provides a series of documentation within a 45-day grading period that shows that the student is not in their least restrictive environment to the point that his or her placement does not ensure the student with exceptionalities makes appropriate progress toward meeting the student's annual goals, the teacher may begin all available federal and state process and complaint procedures. The teacher may not be penalized in any way for advocating for the student, to recommend local advocates, share documentation and information, inform the guardians of their due process rights, and may call for an IEP meeting to review the information gathered from documentation and address the concerns to best adjust the IEP as necessary to address the student's special education needs.
I'm Tracy Wood from Marsh Fork Elementary, and we are doing West Virginia Code 18-20-12, Special Education Student Instructor Ratios and Waivers. Self-contained and resource classrooms, as well as any special education environment, shall not have a student-instructor ratio over the current limit provided for in the Individuals with Disabilities Act of 2004 and State Board Policy 2419. A 2-week waiver may be signed with the understanding that the local county board is responsible to remediate the situation while compensating the teacher with overage pay provided by the county per county or federal funds. This waiver shall be good for 2 weeks to allow the district time to find an additional classroom teacher. Should the district be unable to find an additional classroom teacher, the district, upon the agreement of the teacher, may submit a waiver to the State Board of Education. This waiver shall have the teacher's signature acknowledging that although the class is over the limit, she or he recognizes this is a dire situation and agree to the continued over-ratio compensation. The county may not submit a waiver to exceed the current limit of students set forth in IDEA and 2419 without the written consent of the special education instructor. If the instructor chooses to sign the waiver to exceed the limit, that instructor shall be entitled to the full amount of compensation as provided per county. The county may not allow more than 3 students over the limit, even with additional pay for the teacher. Moving on to Section 4, Policy 2419 excerpts, we have some definitions for you. Least restrictive environment, the educational placement which provides the services and conditions necessary to meet the unique educational and behavioral needs of the student, while providing the student with integration to the maximum extent appropriate with peers without exceptionalities. Individualized Education Program, IEP, a written plan for an eligible student with an exceptionality that is developed, reviewed, and revised in accordance with Policy 2419 and IDEA. Individualized Education Program Team, or IEP team, a group of individuals described in regulations that is responsible for developing, reviewing, or revising an IEP for an eligible student with an exceptionality. Continuum of services and placements, a range of settings in which eligible students with exceptionalities receive special education and related services. General education full-time. The students' specifically designed instruction and related services are delivered inside the general education classes or integrated community settings for 80% or more of the school day. General education part-time. The students' specially designed instruction and related services are delivered inside the general education classes or integrated community settings for no more than 79% of the school day and no less than 40% of the school day.
Okay, Chapter 5. Oh, I'm Samantha Gordon. I'm from Independence Middle School. Chapter 5, LRE Considerations and Placement Decisions. An eligible student must be educated with general education students in the general education classroom to the maximum extent appropriate. Removal from the general education environment occurs only when the nature of severity of exceptionality is such education in general classes and other settings with general education students cannot be achieved satisfactorily even with the use of supplementary aids and services. This requirement is known as the LRE, which is least restricted environment. An appropriate LRE is one of that enables the students to receive IEP services and make reasonable gains toward goals identified in an IEP. In determining an appropriate placement in the LRE, the IEP team begins with the general education environment with supplementary aids and services. If the student's IEP cannot be implemented in that environment with the exception of the reasonable progress on an achievement of the IEP goals, a placement on the continuum of placement options providing less education with students without disabilities may be considered. An eligible student is not to be removed from age-appropriate general education classrooms solely because of the needed accommodations and modifications to the general education curriculum. The IEP must explain the extent, if any, to which the student will not participate in the general education classroom, the general education curriculum, or the extracurricular or non-academic activities, and indicate the percentage of time in general education and special education. The IEP team must consider the following for the LRE in which the IEP can be implemented. LRE, a student receiving special education services to be educated with age-appropriate, non-exceptional peers to the maximum extent appropriate based on the IEP. The LRE decision focuses on with whom the student is educated rather than where the student is educated. The provision includes students placed in the public or private institutions or other care facilities. Basis of placement. Placement decisions are made individually for students. The services and placement needed by each student must be based on the student's unique needs that result from his or her disability or giftedness, not on the student's category of exceptionality or the availability of placement options, services, staff, or space. When to make and review placement decisions. Placement decisions for a student are made after all sections of the IEP, except the educational environment section, have been completed. Placement is determined at least annually by the IEP team. Neighborhood school. A student with a disability must be enrolled in the school or he or she should attend if not disabled unless the IEP requires another location. If the student cannot be educated in the neighborhood school, the student must be provided an educational program as close to the student's home as possible. The IEP team must consider the following when determining the LRE in which the IEP can be implemented. Similar age peers. In considering a setting outside the general education environment, the IEP team must determine a placement in environments including classrooms and schools with similar age peers. Almost done. Harmful effects of placement. Consideration must be given to any potentially harmful effects of placement on the student or the quality of services. Array of services and continuum of placement options. The IEP team must consider an array of services and the continuum of placement options to meet the individual needs of each student.
There we go, we got the cheer. Where's the clap?
Well, good afternoon. I'm Jamie Bailey. I'm from Liberty High School. Yes, thank you. I'll be reading chapters 6 and 7, so you can imagine your kids doing that. So chapter 6 is adequate staff, case management, integrated classrooms, co-taught classrooms, special education classrooms, and levels. The number of students served in an instructional period and the assignment of paraprofessional aides must be determined based on the intensity of services required by the students. While highly qualified teachers and licensed therapists must design and provide initial or original instruction, support personnel can provide reinforcement and practice of previously taught skills or content. Additionally, support personnel may be required to provide assistance to students in response to specific needs related to significant cognitive and sensory impairments, communication, safety, mobility, personal care, behavior, medical health, other unique circumstances. To ensure the provision of FAPE and adherence to procedural requirements, professional special education personnel may be assigned to a group of students for whom they are not only provide direct, indirect special education services, but also for whom they provide specific case management procedural accountability duties, such as sending parent notices, scheduling IEP meetings, reporting progress to parents, coordinating services, tracking timelines, and managing paperwork. The maximum number of students assigned to a service providers is as follows. I have to read this table to you. So teachers who have developmental delay students ages 3 to 5 can have 20 students with IEPs on their caseload. Teachers of the gifted can have 45, speech therapists have 50, and teachers of all other exceptionalities have 30 on the caseload, and we will look at class size requirements in the following slides. Integrated classroom. Integration occurs in general education when students with exceptional needs are provided required accommodations, supplementary aids, and services. Students with exceptionalities whose individualized education programs require an adjustment in either instruction or service to be provided by the general education teacher must approximate natural proportions. When integrated classrooms are established in the 4 core academic subjects, i.e. English, language arts, science, social studies, and math, special education students requiring accommodations must not exceed 30% of the total class enrollment. Co-taught classrooms. Co-teaching is defined as 2 or more professionals delivering substantive instruction to a diverse or blended group of students in a single physical space. For co-taught classrooms where instructional responsibilities are shared between the special ed and the general educator, special education students requiring specifically designed instruction, special education, must not exceed 50% of the total class enrollment. The special educator should not be assigned to more than 1 co-teaching classroom during 1 instructional block. Special education classrooms for students with disabilities. Students may receive special education services in special education environments. Special education staffing per instructional period is based on the student's level of need without regard to the area of disability. Maximum number of students per instructional period based on the level of service. When a student with different level of service needs are provided instruction in the same class, the minimum staffing ratio for the highest level of need applies. So we have another table. So if the student has a level 1 service need in kindergarten through 2nd with 12 students, the minimum staffing ratio is 1 to 6. If they're in grades 3 to 5 with 12 students, the staffing ratio is 1 to 8. If they're in grades 6 to 8, it's 12 students, there's not a staffing requirement, and in 9 to 12, 12 students in that class, there's not an additional staffing requirement. If the student has a level 2 need in grades K through 5, and there's 12 students, they should have 1 to 6, 6 through 8, 12 students in the classroom, again 1 to 6, and 9 through 12, 12 students in the classroom, it should be 1 to 6. If the student has a level 3 service need in grades K through 5, it's a class size of 8 with a staffing of 1 to 4. 6 to 8, class of 8, staffing 1 to 4. And 9 through 12 is a classroom of 8, staffing to 1 to 4. All right, now we're on chapter 7. Change of placement, weapons, illegal drugs, and serious bodily injury. A disciplinary change of placement is a removal from a student's current educational placement for more than 10 consecutive school days, or a series of removals that constitutes a pattern. A pattern is established when the series of removals totals more than 10 cumulative school days in a school year. The student's behavior is substantially similar to his or her behavior in the previous incidents that resulted in the series of removals. And additional factors such as the length of each removal, the total amount of time the student is removed, and the proximity of the removals to one another. Whether a pattern of removals constitutes a change of placement must be determined on a case-by-case basis by school personnel and must be documented on the Disciplinary Action Review Form, or DARF. These determinations are subject to due process and judicial review. After a student with disability has been removed for his or her current placement for 10 school days in the same school year, during any subsequent day of removal, the district must provide services to the student. School personnel may remove a student to an interim alternative education setting for not more than 45 days without regard to whether the behavior is determined to be a manifestation of the student's disability if the student, 1, carries or possesses a weapon at school, on school premises, or at a school function. 2, knowingly possesses, carries, or uses illegal drugs, or sells or solicits the sale of a controlled substance while at school, on the school premises, or at a school function. And 3, inflicts serious bodily injury to another person at school, on school premises, or at a school function. Districts must follow the definitions when removing students because of the previous special circumstances: weapons, drugs, bodily injury. What is a weapon? Well, a weapon is a device, instrument, a material, or substance, animate or inanimate, so it could be fake, that is used for or is readily capable of causing death or serious bodily injury, except that such term does not include a pocket knife, if the blade is less than 2.5 inches in length. What's an illegal drug? A controlled substance, drug, or other substance identified under Schedules 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in Section 202C of the Controlled Substance Act 21 U.S.C. 812C. An illegal drug does not include a controlled substance that is legally possessed or used under the supervision of a licensed healthcare professional, or used under any other authority under that act or in any other provision of the federal law. Lastly, what is serious bodily injury? Well, a bodily injury that involves A, substantial risk of death, B, extreme physical pain, C, protracted and obvious disfigurement, D, protracted loss or impairment of the function of the bodily member, organ, or mental faculty. Thank you.
Thankful to follow up after that. Okay, guys, I'm Melanie Morris, principal at Shady Elementary, and that's a tough act to follow there, but we're going to move on to procedural safeguards. Education is a fundamental right and a necessary benefit for all West Virginia students. IDEA 2004 and Policy 2499 provide procedural safeguards, that is, procedures to protect the educational rights of students with exceptionalities who need changes in the manner of which their education is provided to ensure that it is appropriate for their unique needs. These procedural safeguards ensure the student's rights to a free and appropriate public education through informed parent, adult, student participation in the special education process. The district will provide the parent or adult student a procedural safeguard notice at least one per school year, that is, one copy between July 1st and June 30th. Prior written notice, which is PWN, is the act of informing a parent or adult student in writing within a reasonable amount of time before the district proposes or refuses to initiate or change the student's identification, the evaluation, educational placement, or provision of FAPE. It serves two purposes: to provide the parent or adult student with enough information so that he or she is able to fully understand the district's proposed actions or refused actions, and to provide a framework for database decision or discussion and problem solving. It must include a description of the action proposed or refused by the district, an explanation of why the district proposes or refuses to take that action, and a description of each evaluation procedure, assessment, record, or report the district used as a basis of the proposed or refused action. It also must include a description of other options the IEP team considered and the reasons why these options were rejected, a description of other factors relevant to the district's proposal or refusal, a statement that the parent or adult student has protection under the procedural safeguards, and if the notice is not initial referral for evaluation, a description of how to obtain a copy of the procedural safeguard notice, sources to contact in obtaining assistance in understanding their procedural safeguards notice. The meeting notice is to ensure one or both parents of each student of the exceptionality are present at each meeting and are afforded the opportunity to participate in the meeting, including EC and IEP meetings. The district must provide written notice by notifying parents or the adult students of the meeting early enough, which is no less than 8 days prior to the scheduled meeting date, to ensure that they will have the opportunity to attend, also scheduling the meeting at a mutually agreed on time and place. It must include the purpose, time, and location of the meeting, who will be in attendance, and an explanation that at the discretion of the district or adult student, parent or adult student, other individuals who have knowledge or special expertise regarding the student as determined by the district or parent or the adult student inviting the individual can attend the meeting. Parent participation. To ensure that parental participation in the special education process, the district must afford the parents of the student with an exceptionality an opportunity to inspect and review all educational records with respect to the identification, evaluation, and educational placement of the student and the provision of a free and appropriate public education to the student. The district may conduct the eligibility committee meeting or IEP meeting without a parent or adult student in attendance only when the district has documentation that reasonable measures have been taken to ensure the parent or adult student participates. If unable to convince the parent or adult student that he or she should attend, the district must have a record of its attempts to arrange a mutually agreed on time and place, such as detailed records of phone calls or attempted phone calls, copies of correspondence sent to the parent or adult student, detailed records of visits made to the parent or adult student with results of those visits. If neither parent can attend, the district must use other methods to ensure the parent or adult student participation, including individual or conference telephone calls. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, that, I guess I could say that session's over there, and that ends your day on that. But there is some important things there. We hope you take it to heart and listen to it. It all is about House Bill 2499. The requirement is done. We've their obligation on that. I did introduce, the principals are up here. These are your principals. Some of you brought your own cheering section, I saw. Others did not. You know, I mean, the board didn't bring our cheering section either. Don't worry about it. So, and what was going on up here, you may not wonder why Mr. Ford called us into a session. Legally, we have to be in a board meeting to be able to have this training. So that's what we did that. We'll discuss that in a minute. Again, I want to thank you all for coming today and for understanding what we have to do. But don't let this training demise what we feel about you and the importance you do and what you do every day with our students. As far as going back, I understand that your building administrators are supposed to communicate with you what time you have to be back. At least hopefully today, come in here, you'll go through and get you a decent meal on your way home and back for your sessions tonight. So that's all I have. I think now we need to adjourn our meeting. Mr. Ford? Adjourn our meeting. Adjourned. We're adjourned. Thank you, guys.